Well, hello, Duarte. Welcome back to a second look, and welcome to Excavating the Gospels. You know, I've done this show now for about 10 years, and by far, it seems, the most popular subjects we cover are in the realm of archaeology, especially biblical archaeology. And so tonight, I thought, what a great opportunity at the beginning of this year to cover 10 of the most important archaeological discoveries relating to the four Gospels. And those 10 will pop up on your screen. There they are. And you can see we're going to have to go pretty fast to get those 10 discoveries in, as well as the pictures and the film clips we have to show you as well. So number 10, in true David Letterman style, is boat. What does that mean? Well, we have a picture for you of what has been called by archaeologists the Jesus boat. It so happened that in January 1986, there was a drought on the Sea of Galilee. Now, the Sea of Galilee is about 12 by 6 miles, so it's what we Americans would call a big lake. But nevertheless, it's a very treacherous place, as you can tell from some of the gospel stories. And in January of 1986, a drought revealed on the shores of the Sea of Galilee this 26-foot-long remains, relic, you might say, of a first-century boat. Apparently, there's no doubt about the dating. The 26-foot by 8-foot high vessel. Even there's a picture on the wall of the museum showing where it is. And as people who are interested in the Bible, as well as archaeology, wondered, would there be room for 13 people on the boat? Because, of course, Jesus had 12 disciples and himself. And yes, there was no question about it. This boat, while no one could ever say it was the same boat used by the disciples, Peter, Andrew, James, and John, who were all fishermen, it sort of is the way archaeology works. Archaeology doesn't prove the Bible necessarily, but it gives you background to show that what the Bible's talking about is reliable, it's factual, and it's accurate. Now, I can't let that one subject, this was quite a big discovery at the time. What's interesting for us is there are so many recent discoveries going on, but there's so much crowded stuff in the news, we can't really get into it all. But this almost went unnoticed in the Western world. But there it was, confirmation that 13 men could be out on the Sea of Galilee in a boat, and that means I can't resist showing you the next picture, which is a depiction of the night that Jesus walked on the water. Now, I hate to break off with hard artifactual evidence from archaeology like the splendid little boat we just saw, but the picture that you're seeing now is an artist's depiction of the disciples the night Jesus walked on the water. And we could use people right about now who walk on water. Some of the things we're going through in this country. In the book of Matthew, it says, Jesus appeared during the fourth watch of the night. That's about 3 o'clock in the morning. The disciples were out all night trying to get back to shore. They were having trouble, experienced fishermen as they were. Jesus appeared to them for a reason. It was just after John the Baptist had been beheaded. And Jesus wanted to reassure his disciples he was the God who could walk on water. Israel had been delivered from the Red Sea, and now he was showing he was acting in that realm. But the Jesus boat just adds a little bit of backing, you might say, and confirmation of some of those gospel events. Now, number 9 on our list, and we're going to have to move fast. Number 9, we're up in Galilee. The Jesus boat was found in the Sea of Galilee, excavated there. We're going to take you to Cana, which is a town over to the west of the Sea of Galilee. And there they claim to have one of the 6 jugs that were used to turn water into wine. If you remember the Gospel of John, Jesus did his first miracle in Cana of Galilee, which is a town either 3 miles northeast of Nazareth, where Jesus was from, up in the hill country, overlooking more or less the Sea of Galilee, or another town 8 miles to the northeast. And that by itself is interesting. They've got 2 spots claiming to be Cana, but the bronze prize goes to the town 3 miles to the northwest because There they used to grow fig trees, and Jesus refers to Nathanael, who was from Cana, incidentally. He said, I saw you sleeping under the fig tree. So that's the way historians do their work. Now, if you look at that jug again, we're not here to say, of course, that that is the stone jug. People of the city claim that. And when you go to the Middle East, you have to be careful about what they tell tourists. You have to be somewhat skeptical. But at least this shows you the size of the jugs. They were 20 to 30 gallon stone jugs. And if you have 6 more along the lines of that people try to say was one of the original 6, if they could all hold 20 to 30 gallons of wine, it shows you that our Lord knew how to party, because that's 120 gallons of wine being turned into very good wine at that wedding. You'll remember the story where the man drew up the wine Jesus had turned from the water, and he said, boy, this is the best wine I've ever tasted. Well, that's Cana, and that's the Sea of Galilee area. Now we're going to move down to Jerusalem, which is a treasure trove of biblical archaeology. It's almost like a one-city exhibit for backing up many of the events in the Old and New Testament. But our focus tonight is on the Gospels. Now, we're going to see here, we have Jerusalem, a view of Jerusalem from the southeast. There's the famous Dome of the Rock on the right. And if you move out a little bit to the wall that was built by the Turks in the 1500s, almost nothing you see in Jerusalem except way deep down was from the time of Jesus these days, especially those walls around the city. But if you keep going down south, walking down that hill, you will come to this spot called the Pool of Siloam. We're going to show you a picture of the Pool of Siloam, which is the end of Hezekiah's tunnel. You know, in the ancient world, people had to build cities and to make sure there was a water supply. So King David built his capital city in Jerusalem because there was a spring called Gihon that ran under the city. That's mentioned many times in the Old Testament. But in the New Testament period, the spring sort of came to an ending at this beautiful colonnaded place called the Pool of Siloam at the base of the temple. And people would, as you know, very religious people, before they would go up to the temple, they would have to wash and bathe and cleanse, at least physically, as much as they could. And this is part of that famous gospel spot mentioned in John chapter 9, the Pool of Siloam. Jesus actually met a blind man, put clay on his face, a very strange thing to do, but apparently one of the Roman emperors had did it with his servants as well. It's strange enough to be true. That's the way the Gospels are. They record things that make you think, well, if it's in here, why would it be in here if they're just trying to make a deceptive story? Why put this in? Jesus put the clay on the man's eyes, told him to go wash in the Pool of Siloam. Now, if you look at that picture of the Pool of Siloam, once again, you will notice that today even there are steps going down to the pool. What is significant is not that long ago, actually it was about 2005, 2006, Jewish gas and pipe workers trying to repair the drainage system in Jerusalem found the whole other remains of steps that were from the first century that really expanded the size of this Pool of Siloam. So that's very recently, 2005, 2006. They've actually found if you knock that wall down, you'd get on the other side, you'd excavate and find first century seating rows. Well, this man went down to the Pool of Siloam, washed the clay off his eyes, and he could see. And if you want to read one of the more humorous stories in the gospel, read about what happened when this man faced the Pharisees going around telling everyone a man named Jesus had made him well, which is precisely why Jesus had done that. Coming up from the pool to go into the temple, he caused quite a stir. You know, they didn't have radio and television, but word of mouth was pretty effective in Jerusalem in the first century. So that's the Pool of Siloam. You can read more about that in John chapter 9. Now we come to truly, if you're counting off the list, we have a list of New Testament gospel discoveries that we put up here once in a while. In case you're keeping track, number 10 was the boat from Galilee. Number 9 was the jug from Cana. Number 8, we've just covered the Pool of Siloam. Now, two of the most famous and fascinating artifacts that have been found in Jerusalem fairly recently. In the year 2002, in an Arab village south of Jerusalem, a group of workers, again, working in a place where, again, they're trying to make the roads go through, trying to do some infrastructure repair. They came across a section of graves and vaults in which were some limestone boxes. Now, that's what we're going to show you next. This is a famous artifact. It was only found in the year 2002. That's why we're doing this show, because some of these things have been happening so recently, it's been hard to keep up with all the news we've had to be digesting in the last 10 years. But in 2002, city workers uncovered in an Arab village to the south this limestone box. It's under 2 feet high, but the inscription on the outside made headlines all around the world because the inscription said, "James, son of Joseph, brother of Jesus." Now that's exactly what the New Testament Gospels tell us, that James was indeed one of the brothers of Jesus, the next oldest in the family of Mary. And when James writes his letter in the book of James, he calls himself the brother of our Lord. Now, what's interesting is, of course, this was such a very obvious reference to Jesus that you might say it almost had to be disputed, and it is. So if you go back and look at that picture of the James box, you can't see the inscription too well, but if you look at it along the middle, you can see that. Well, there have been all kinds of disputes. This is a disputed artifact, you might say, because if it's original, if it's true, it is the most important archaeological evidence of Jesus that we have yet discovered. Of course, we have gospel writings, we have the Roman historians, we have the Jewish historians of the first century to confirm the life of Jesus or his existence. But if this is true, then that really begins to put a very stronger light on the Gospels as being authentic history. So I mentioned it to you. I want to say it's been disputed, but more and more, about 70% of the evidence of the scholars investigating this think this looks like it's authentic, because who would invent such a thing? And James was very well known in the first century in Jerusalem. As the brother of Christ, he was the head of the Jerusalem church, for example. You'll see Paul going up to talk to James. And you'll also realize that James was, if you read the history of the Jewish period, the Jewish writers, they talked about James being executed in 62 AD. A high priest took over who didn't like James and the Christians, and apparently they either threw him from the top of the temple or killed him with clubs that they beat out clothes with. So the James box is one thing. The next artifact, number 6 in our top 10 gospel artifacts, is a ossuary or bone box, the fancy name for it is, belonging to Caiaphas the high priest. And we're going to show you, when you see the picture, you will see the difference in quality of this box and the one relating to James. James was the son of Mary, a peasant. This one you're going to see now is the one of Caiaphas, who was the high priest in Jerusalem. You can tell this is a much more ornate, much more elaborate kind of a bone box, if you want to be crude. It is about just more than 2 feet long and about 1 foot across. And Caiaphas was the high priest. It mentions his name on the inscription on the side. This was found in 1990 as they were building a road in the Peace Forest south of Jerusalem. And we know Caiaphas from the Jewish and Roman writers. He was high priest from 18 to 36 AD. That's how we know approximately when Jesus was alive and teaching. This has been a very significant discovery because there's almost no disputing this at all. It mentions his name, his family, all the way back to 1990, and very few people have heard about it. And to fill in some of the background on the Caiaphas box and to show you a little bit more about what they have been excavating in the upper city of Jerusalem, above the temple area, they found a whole little civilization of rich priests. As you see, of course, in the Gospels, Jesus and the Jerusalem priesthood are always at loggerheads. He doesn't have a place to sleep some nights, and they're living in fairly good, luxurious surroundings. Here's a clip from a video made or put out by a group called Vision Video, and it's our friend Ron Kelly, who's a Duarte native, and he made this back in 1997 on a trip to Jerusalem, and it will fill you in more on the high priesthood and some of the archaeological stuff that's been turning up in the last 20 years in Jerusalem. So let's play that clip.
The high priest's house was located here in the fashionable upper city of Jerusalem, not far from today's Zion Gate. Excavations in the upper city have revealed large and beautiful houses of the rich, villas in the Roman style, with mosaic-covered floors, panel ceilings, and imported furniture of the finest quality. Among them are these ruins of what is called the Palatial Mansion. It conveys an idea of what the interior of Caiaphas' home might have looked like. Gathered at the house of Caiaphas were chief priests, elders, and scribes. Here, the initial proceedings before the Sanhedrin took place. The trial of Jesus wasn't held in court, but in a private home. And that, like trial by night, was forbidden by Jewish law.
Hello everyone. If you've just joined us, this is Neil Earle on a second look, and we're running through 10 of the most important recent archaeological discoveries relating to the New Testament. We've called this show Excavating the Gospels. You just saw our friend Ron Kelly from a film he made in 1997 showing you the high priest's house. And if you're keeping score, we're going to put up a list of the David Letterman fashion of the 10 archaeological discoveries relating to the Gospels. We've covered the first 5 so far. We're now at the high priest's house. Here comes, to me, one of the most important, because Pontius Pilate is famous in history as the man who finally gave the okay to execute Jesus Christ. And believe it or not, in 1962, Italian archaeologists near the city of Caesarea is out on the coast from Jerusalem, about 100 miles to the northwest. That was the Roman capital. That's where the Romans had their base in Judea, as they called it. And guess what? Guess what the archaeologists found in 1962? Something that they drool over, that historians dream about. An ancient inscription on a stone monument, carved in stone, the name of Tiberius, the emperor, and the name of Pontius Pilate, the governor, erected by Pilate himself. So here's Ronald Kelly in Caesarea going to explain to you this important discovery from 1962.
Pilate was Roman governor of the imperial province of Judea. His official residence was at Caesarea by the Mediterranean Sea, about 65 road miles from Jerusalem. Caesarea was Judea's main seaport as well as the Roman administrative center. It was customary for the governor to leave his headquarters in Caesarea to go up to Jerusalem at the time of the main feasts to keep order in the city. At Passover time, Jerusalem was always packed with people, creating an explosive atmosphere. This is Caesarea today. Over here are the ruins of a Roman theater built by Herod the Great about 20 years before Christ. In 1961, a battered first-century limestone tablet was discovered in the theater. This is a copy on site at Caesarea. The original is in the Israel Museum in Jerusalem. Notice the inscription. The tablet bears the Latin name Pontius Pilatus, part of which you can see here. It's the only known inscription from his lifetime that refers to Pilate.
Well, hello everyone. This is Neil Earle again. We're racing through 10 of the most important recent archaeological discoveries. That was Ronald Kelly from a film called Victory in Jerusalem. He was showing you the Pontius Pilate inscription found in 1962 by Italian archaeologists in Caesarea, the Roman capital in the first century. Remember, Luke chapter 3, verse 1 says, "In the 15th year of the reign of Tiberius Caesar, Pontius Pilate being governor of Judea." That is nice to have if you're having to defend the Bible or the Gospels, an inscription actually written by Pilate himself. Now, of course, Pilate's written about by 2 Roman authors as well. So we come down now to, on our countdown from 10, we're down to number 4, and this is maybe one of the most gruesome sights we will have to show you, but we've gone from the boat in Galilee and the jug in Cana, the Pool of Siloam, the James box, the priest box, the Pilate inscription. Now we take you down to something a little bit more gruesome. But in 1968, in caves north and east of Jerusalem, they actually discovered the remains of a crucified victim who was 5 foot 5 inches tall and had inscribed and sized in his left foot, I think it was, a 4.5-inch nail, which we'll show you now on this last film clip by Mr. Ronald Kelly, courtesy of Vision Video. I think it'll
It was a common sight throughout the Roman Empire, used by the Romans on a vast scale. In 71 BC, for example, over 6,000 slaves, including the gladiator Spartacus, were crucified on the Appian Way near Rome. Crucifixion was a brutal and degrading form of execution. Archaeology sheds light on this ancient form of torture. A macabre discovery was made in the summer of 1966 on a nearby hill named Givat HaMivtar on the eastern edge of Jerusalem. 4 Jewish tombs were found dating to the first half of the 1st century. Among the bones uncovered was the skeleton of a crucifixion victim. The 2 heel bones were securely joined together by an 8-inch nail. It's a grim reminder of the brutality of crucifixion. This artist's recreation shows the probable position of the body during crucifixion. Suspended in this awkward position, the victim died slowly from shock, thirst, or the gradual weakening of the muscles used for breathing. Victims of crucifixion often lingered in excruciating pain for up to 2 or 3 days. To the Romans, crucifixion was a shameful death reserved for the worst of criminals. Today, the cross is the preeminent symbol of Christian faith, recalling our redemption through the death of Christ.
And greetings again. This is Neil Earle on A Second Look. We are counting down 10 of the most significant and recent discoveries in archaeology relating to the 4 Gospels. Now, we started with a boat up in Galilee, and we've worked our way down now to the stones of Jerusalem. And we will go to look at, and we've shown them many times on A Second Look, but certainly one of the most irrefutable elements of archaeology relating to the 4 Gospels is the fact of Herod's temple. You will remember that even the disciples were impressed with the size and the scope of Herod's temple. And in 1967, when the Israelis captured the old city of Jerusalem, they were now able to excavate the area around the Temple Mount. They had never really had possession of that for about 1900 years. Well, of course, what they found was somewhat remarkable. And the city that was built by Herod was in every way as grandiose as the 4 Gospels seem to indicate. Jesus said, "Destroy this temple and I'll raise it up in 3 days." And the Pharisees were astounded. They said, it took 46 years to build this temple. Herod put everything into this. We're going to show you a picture of some people digging just almost at Herodian level, because Jerusalem's been buried by centuries of conquerors and conquests. As Jesus said, it will be trodden down by the Gentiles. And in the summer of 1970, just 2 years after the important Temple Mount dig started, I was able to work there with my wife for a whole summer on this dig. Now, if you get an idea of the size and scope of Herod's project in Jerusalem, this is not the clearest picture we could have shown, I guess, but I wanted to get the people alongside of it. Herod, now you're digging down to the period of Herod and the 1st century. That's something even the Romans couldn't destroy. Some of these stones are 5 to 6 feet long, 3 feet across, and measure about 5 or 6 tons on average. If you stand at the foot of a stairs in a public building, stand at the foot of a stage, in a school or a public building, you get an idea of how big these stones were. They're called ashlars. They're just very impressive. There's no denying the rock evidence in Jerusalem that Herod was the great builder as well as the great butcher that the New Testament says he is. Now, we're going to look next at a bath shot that we had. This is actually not too bad to cover this right now, because Jesus said in Matthew 24 to the disciples, he said, "There will not be left here one stone upon another." And we know from history that that has happened. But in the summer of 1970, my wife at least was privileged to be in on the discovery of this column you'll see on the bottom right-hand side of this picture. And it has the markings Emperor Vespasian, and it was erected by his son Titus, who was the destroyer of Jerusalem in 70 AD. And here was evidence, yet archaeological evidence now, not just history, but archaeology, hard stone evidence that the Romans were in Jerusalem. Titus was the general. His father was Vespasian, who was at that time the emperor. And that pretty well nails down the fact that, yes, the 10th Legion was in Jerusalem. And as Christ had said, indeed, in the temple area, the temple itself, there was not one stone left upon another. But some of those massive Herodian stones still remain to remind us of what a powerful and rich city Jerusalem was in the first century. One more slide I think we could show you shows a typical Roman bath of the first century. And I mentioned this because Roman baths were all over the place, but this was just down the rise of the Temple Mount, and it was a bath that people used to purify themselves. And in John chapter 5, an angel used to stir the water at one of these baths. The poor man, 38 years lame, couldn't get into it. Jesus said, "Take up your bed and walk. I will heal you," without the water. That's probably not the same bath, but it gives you an idea of how archaeology helps us understand and certainly lends credence and veracity to the biblical account. And it's always a great privilege to keep up with these findings and discoveries in archaeology. So what have we covered tonight? Let's go back, review one more time from the countdown of number 10. Hard to believe we got it all in. The Jesus boat in Galilee. Pick this up the next time you watch a second look. The jug in Cana, a lot like the jugs he used for the miracle of the water into wine. Pool of Siloam, and all the other things that we have been sort of racing through. But in this way, we just want to whet your appetite and maybe get you ready for another show on a second look where we talk about maybe the archaeology of the book of Acts. It's a fascinating subject, a fascinating field. I'm so thankful to have worked there in the summer of 1970. What did I find? My wife. She was the biggest discovery of 1970 as far as I was concerned. But I think we've shared something else with you there as well. So keep studying, keep reading, keep up to date with what's going on. The field of archaeology can be very interesting in filling in some of the background and veracity of the four Gospels. So that's excavating the Gospels. Who knows? Maybe next time we'll do excavating the book of Acts. Whatever happens, we'll see you next time on a second look.
Thy word is the lamp unto